you. So you have to stand. אוקיי, חברים יקרים, ערב טוב לכולם. אני שמח לראות ככה באנשים שהגיעו היום. Michel, just a few words in Hebrew, nothing about you. אז אני באמת שמח לראות ככה באנשים שהגיעו. מי שאמר לי שעשינו בילדאפ לא נורמלי לאירוע, אז מי שלא קרא למטה בתחתית של ההזמנה, כתוב שבשביל ליהנות באמת מהאירוע צריך לשתות. אז היה יין, מי שלא הספיק, בעיה שלו. אז לפני שנעבור לאירוע, קודם כל אני רוצה להגיד תודה רבה ליניב פוקס. יניב. פעם ראשונה, פעם שנייה. מישהו יכול לקרוא לשם? תודה עופר. יניב. איפה? טוב. ולמרטין, מרטין פה? בואנה, באמת עסוקים. אני אומר שהשארתם להם יין, זה מה שמדאיג אותי. להגיד תודה רבה כמובן לשרל פרלמן שעזר לנו להפיק את האירוע. הוא תכף יגיד כמה מילים. וכמובן לתמי ולאורנה, שמן הסתם לא פה, הם ייכנסו בהמשך. על ההפקה של האירוע הנפלא הזה. ובואו רגע נסכם את השנה, כי זה האירוע האחרון של השנה. אז בעיקרון, שנת 2008-2009 התחילה באירוע עם מאיר ברנד, מנכ"ל גוגל ישראל, המשיכה בפאנל כלכלי, עם 5 פאנליסטים, שדיבר על המשבר הכלכלי והתעשיית ההייטק בתוכו, אחרי זה פאנל מומחים בנושא אנרגיה נקייה, סרט ולסים בשיר, יחסי ישראל ארצות הברית, מה שקראנו או בוי או ביבי, אני חושב שלצערי זה מתחיל יותר או בוי מאשר או ביבי, ואנחנו כמובן באירוע המסכם, שהוא הקוקטייל השנתי או האירוע החברתי השנתי, מישל. במקביל פעל פורום יזמות, אבי, אתה פה? אבי בלאו, נאמבר 1. אז אבי, יש לנו 2 אבי בלאו, נמשיכו לתכירו בהמשך את אבי בלאו השני. תקום רגע, שיראו אותך. אבי בלאו מרכז כבר כמה שנים, בעצם מההקמה, את פורום יזמות. זה הפורום שבעצם אירח מספר case studies ואנשי הון סיכון, וכמובן case study נוסף יש לנו ב8/7, ביולי בחודש הבא. הפורום החדש שהתחיל לעבוד על ידי אבי בלאו השני שלדעתי לא פה, הוא פורום בנושא אנרגיות אלטרנטיביות, לא, טכנולוגיות אלטרנטיביות. חבר'ה, היה נושא שלא אין אפס. והסתובבתי עם בקבוק. אז יש לנו בעצם, היו לנו 2 אירועים מאז שהקמנו את הפורום, והאירוע השלישי הוא במהלך החודש הבא, תחום של התייעלות אנרגטית. הפורום הבא הוא פורום ניהול הייטק, עמי. פעם ראשונה, פעם שנייה. סטנד-אפ, כמו שאומרים. אני יודע. הוא לקח ברצינות את הקטע של לחלק את היין. שאמרתם ולא, הוא שתה. אז גם הפורום הזה, מעבר לכל ההרצאות נפלאות שהיו לנו, יש לו עוד אירוע בהמשך בסוף החודש, בנושא מזעור סיכונים. הפורום הרביעי והאחרון בתחום הפורום המקצועיים הוא פורום ביו-רפואה. אייל קץ לא נמצא פה, יהודה בחר, אתה פה? תמו, שיראו אותך. יהודה בחר מנהל את הפורום הזה יחד עם אייל קץ, שנמצא כרגע בחול, ויש לנו פאנל מומחים בחודש הבא, סביב נושא חברת ונטור, חברה בתחום הסנטים שנמכרה לפני מספר חודשים באקזיט $325 מיליון, ואנחנו בעצם עם ההרצאה הזאת משיקים את הפורמט החדש של הפורום, שבו תמיד ישבו 3 אנשים על הפאנל, אחד מהצד הקליני, הרפואי, השני מהצד ההנדסי והשלישי מהצד העסקי. אז זה בעצם המפגש הראשון בפורמט הזה. היו לנו כמובן סדרה של סדנאות וקורסים, שהאחרונה שתתקיים בסוף החודש עם מישל, הוא סדנה בנושא של חידוד המסר, קיבלתם איזה אימיילים. כל נושא של פורום, זה מרטין דרך אגב, הוא הפיק את האירוע, מגיע למחאות כפיים אני חושב. יניב פה? תכניס אותו.
אבל יניב מגיע לו יותר ממנו.
תכניס אותו, הוא לא נכנס, זה העניין. הנה יניב, תכירו, זה יניב, הוא כבר 4 שנים מפיק, 5 שנים מפיק את האירוע הזה, אז יש לו מסורת כגודל האירוע, כאורך האירוע. שילובים מקצועיים עבודה הוא פורום שהקמנו בעצם בעקבות המשבר הכלכלי, כי הם כבר 5 מפגשים שהמטרה שלהם לעזור לאנשים שנמצאים בין לבין, אנשים שמחפשים שינוי בקריירה, או מחפשים פשוט יזמות להתחיל או להצטרף אליה. המפגש האחרון לשנה הזאת יהיה בסוף יולי, אז אתם תקבלו עליו עוד מייל נוסף. עוד פורמט של אירועים שאנחנו מריצים לאורך כל השנה הוא בעצם ביקורים בתעשייה. היה לנו 2 ביקורים בגוגל, ביקור באורנג', מפעל נשר, ולאחרונה גם במקורות. ובצד של הסיורים החברתיים, בעצם השנה כמיטב המסורת, לא היינו יצירתיים, רק התחלנו לפני כולם פשוט, את האירועים סביב תל אביב. אז התחלנו בעצם עוד מהקיץ שעבר בסיור בגני שרונה, המשכנו בחלון ליפו, משכונה לעיר, ולאחרונה גם בסיור של בעקבות אלכסנדר פן ויונה וולך. בעצם סדרת הסיורים הזאת נתנה את המכלול של האירועים סביב נושא תל אביב. שנה הבאה יהיו דברים אחרים. אז זה בעצם מסכם, תאמינו או לא, את מה שעשינו במשך כל השנה, שזה בערך ממוצע של אירוע לשבוע. חלק מהדברים שמופיעים פה הם יותר מאשר מפגש אחד, כמו הסדנאות למיניהם. מה מחכה לנו שנה הבאה? אז אני לא אספר לכם מה מחכה בכל הפורומים ובכל המסגרות השונות, אבל אני יכול להגיד לכם שאת אירוע הפתיחה השנתי, ה-official opening dinner שלנו, יפתח דוב מורן, שהוא היזם של מודו, שבעצם ייתן הרצאה על מודו, על הקמת חברת טלפונים סלולריים, שנקרא איך משיקים את זה, או איך מולידים חברה כזאת, בלי אפידורל. אחריו יהיה פאנל בנושא ויקיפדיה. בהמשך אנחנו מקווים להביא מרצה מחו"ל שאני לא רוצה לחשוף את שמו כרגע בתחום האינטרנט. פאנל מומחים בנושא חקר המוח, יהיה לנו פאנל כלכלי, וכמובן עוד פעם אירוע שנתי, אירוע חברתי מהסוג של היום, שמן הסתם יופק על ידי יניב, באותה מידה שאירוע הפתיחה בשנים האחרונות מופק על ידי אוריון. פעם ראשונה, פעם שנייה. איפה? יד, רגל, לקום? אז לא. בקיצור, זה מה שמתכנת לנו שנה הבאה, אז מי שלא נרשם, זו ההזדמנות. ועכשיו לאירוע של הערב. What makes you different as a person is what makes you better in your career. זה בעצם נושא ההרצאה. אני חושב שכשחיפשתי מה מייחד את האירוע ולמה בחרנו בו, מה שמצאתי זה מה שאמר ג'ון פורד, You can speak well if your tongue can deliver the message of your heart. I think what our lecturer today, our speaker today, Mr. Michel Neray, is so good at is to enable each and every one of us to find his own essential message. And that's basically the name of his company. He's the founder and chief differentiation officer of the Essential Message. That's his company. I think you all read his bio. I think the most prestigious or the most unique thing I read about is his second-degree belt in karate, which in Hebrew means Dan Stein. But I'll leave it up to Shachar as well as Michel to talk about it. But actually, we've been asked to cancel the event. We've been very stubborn to hold it, because what you don't know is that Michel Neray just recently appeared in Iran, which is a nice thing. I mean, we wrote it on the invitation, probably got at least 5 of you here. But what you don't know is what you see, and you didn't make the connection, is what is happening in Iran these days. So, you know, maybe a new revolution will evolve out of this night, and maybe not. I will leave that to Michel. But I think that best is for me to ask Shachar here. One last note is that, like I told you, we hold an event which is a half-day workshop in the afternoon, 5 to 9, and which is what drives you crazy makes you great. You got the invitation, and you will see tonight why for some of you that could be a must. But that's up to you. It's very good for entrepreneurs, consultants, and of course executives. Shachar, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
אהלן, שנה שעברה הייתי פה גם, זוכרים? אז אני אהיה הרגל, שנה הבאה, איפה אנחנו? שנה הבאה אני סגור, נכון? אני לא רוצה לדבר הרבה זמן, נתתי למישל לדבר. מה שמעניין זה הקשר שלי עם שילובים, שהוא נמשך הרבה מאוד זמן, ובעצם אני רוצה לסכם אותו, ובעצם לראות אירוע כזה מדהים, בעצם בשלושה סיפורים. מישל מדבר על מושג שנקרא It all starts with a conversation. אוקיי, הכל מתחיל בשיחה. ויש שלוש שיחות שאני ערכתי שגרמו לאירוע הזה להתקיים. השיחה הראשונה הייתה לפני בערך 5 שנים עם עמי דניאל. איפה הוא עמי? עמי הגיע אליי למתודה, הייתי אז מנכ"ל מתודה, התיישב מולי, אנחנו לא מכירים. אחרי 5 דקות הוא אומר לי, שחר, אתה יכול לתת לנו הרצאה בשילובים על תיאטרון? הוא לא מכיר אותי, הוא לא יודע שום דבר, אבל כיוון שיש עוד מושג שאני אוהב להגיד אותו, זה נקרא כן ו. זאת אומרת, זה לא להגיד לא, לא להגיד כן אבל. אמרתי לו כן, לא הייתה לי הרצאה על תיאטרון. באתי, ואתה, המפגש הראשון שלי עם שילובים, מאז הייתי פה במספר אירועים, כולל לפני חודש וחצי, יניב לא פוקס, וגיא הזמינו אותי למועדון דורשי עבודה, ועשינו פה סדנה, אני רואה פה כמה פרצופים שגמרו בסדנה. המפגש השני, ש-starts with a conversation, פגשתי את מישל, היי מישל, הייתי בכנס בבולטימור לפני 8 חודשים, בקומה ה-18 במלון טרמונט בבולטימור, פעם שנה שהייתי בכנס בינלאומי, ואני יוצא מהחדר שלי, סוגר את הדלת ויוצא למעלית. ומהכיוון השני, another bold guy, קרח כמוני, מגיע גם כן, מחכה למעלית, שלום, שלום, כי אומרים שלום לאנשים במעלית, עד שירדנו למטה כבר היינו חברים, זו הייתה השיחה השנייה. אחרי שהוא סיים את ההרצאה שלו, לא ידעתי שהוא מרצה בכנס, יש במלון הרבה אנשים. אחרי שהוא גמר להרצות בכנס שאני הייתי, ניגשתי ואמרתי לו, מישל, שנה הבאה אתה תהיה בישראל פה ותרצה לנו בכנס. לא ידעתי שיהיה כנס, בטח שלא פה באירוע הזה. But all starts with conversation. אז זה התחיל. השיחה השלישית הייתה עם יריב. לפני בערך חודש וחצי, יריב צלצל אליי באיזשהו עניין עסקי, נפגשנו. אומרים כן לפגישה עסקית, לא אומרים לא. נכון, נטוורקינג זה להגיד כן. ישבנו בערך 3 שעות, כי פשוט לא יכולנו להיפרד. דיברנו על המון דברים. באיזשהו שלב, אמרתי לו, רגע, יש פה איזה עניין פה, מישל נרי, בחור שאני מביא מלאה, זה נשמע מעניין. ומפה לשם, בעזרת גם של יניב, ומרטין, וכל האחרים, ואיפה תמי, שפשוט העזרה שלהם מטורפת, זה פשוט לא יאומן. בכלל, כל המועדון הזה, זה פשוט, אני מקווה שאתם מעריכים את זה, יש פה איזו אווירה ממש מיוחדת, אני לא כל פעם חוזר לפה ועושה עוד דברים אצלכם. אז 3 שיחות, אולם מלא, פשוט מדהים. אני יכול להגיד לכם שכשאני פגשתי את מישל, לא ידעתי שעשה לי שינוי בחיים, אבל בעצם העסק שלי מאז זה ממש ממש פורח. אותו עסק שאני מנהל של לעזור לעסקים קטנים, ואני עוזר לאנשים מי שנמצא פה, ואתם היום תיקחו את כל מה שהוא נותן לכם, כי זו מתנה שהוא נותן לכם, ואני אבוא שנייה לאנגלית להציג אותו. מישל, English now. I told them how I met you in Baltimore. I told them that you can help them do some changes in life, but they have to listen, to participate, and then to go home and make homework. So without any delays, I want to welcome Michel Neray. Enjoy the evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No, this is good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Shachal. Thank you, Yarif. Where is he? Right here. So how is everybody? Good? You know, I don't know about here in Israel, but in Canada and America, you ask somebody, how are you? And 9 times out of 10, and they don't say, fine. They don't say it anymore. They used to. But now, you ask somebody, how are you? How you doing? What they say is, they say one of 3 things. They say either stressed, tired, or busy. How are you? Stressed, tired, or busy? I don't know about you, but I think they say that because it makes them feel important. Right? You're not stressed, you're not important unless you could say you're stressed, tired, or busy. Do you see that? I mean, that's the way people are. So what I suggest to people is that just cut straight to the chase. Just tell me what you really mean. And next time you feel like you're about to say the words stressed, tired, or busy, replace it with the word important. Just replace it with the word important, okay? I mean, there's no need to beat around the bush. Yeah, it's funny, I almost didn't make it here on time because well, I'm important. Actually, I have to check my email. I've got 350 emails in my inbox waiting to be answered. You know why? I'm important. You know, we had to do so much before packing here and leaving Toronto, packing up our house, getting our kids ready, making sure they knew what to do. We finally fall into bed. It's after midnight, and I know we've got a day and a half of traveling between stopovers and just the flight, and we're going to be crazy on the plane. And I put my arm around my wife, and she says, Michel, I'm so important. Well, I say, well, come on, Barbara, I'm important too. Right? She puts her head under the covers, and she says, not that important. Are we having fun yet? Is this fun? Say, muy kef. Muy kef. We're going to talk about what happened here. We're going to talk about differentiation-based leadership. And it is all about what makes you different as a person is actually what makes you better. Not just in your business, but in your career, in your own business, in your career, and in your life. And we're going to talk about that. But what's the biggest complaint that people have today? Everybody feels things would be better if not for the economy, right? The economy is terrible. The economy is the cause of... Well, in Israel, we have other problems. True. It's true. But the economy is a big part of the problem, right? Well, just take a look at this. Anybody recognize any of these companies? $14 businesses that started during an economic downturn. So is the economy really our biggest problem? Or could there be something else? And if I could show you another way to look at where we are today and what the real problems that are facing us in business or in our careers, would that be of interest to you? Yes? I understand Ken, too. To understand what the real challenge that is facing us today, we have to take a look at the history of mass communications. Now, it's going to be a brief history of time, but we're going to go all the way back to 40,000 years ago, the beginning of mass communication. And we started with cave paintings or cave drawings. And that was a way for people to get their message out from one person, or maybe they had a business selling dinosaurs and they had to find customers. Okay, I know, I'm mixing up the Jurassic period and whatever this is called. But, pardon me? A few million years, yeah, so they missed it. Well, then maybe they buried all the dinosaur bones. And they would, for a fee, they would show people where they were. But that was really the beginning of mass communications. 11,000 years ago, it was the beginning of writing. The pictograms. That was what they are, even before the alphabet. Pictograms. And there were three kinds of pictograms. There were logograms, ideograms, and what they call pictograms. And that was another way, the evolution of mass communication. 4,000 years ago, it was really the beginning of writing, when the tablet was found. See, I told you, we're going quick through the years. So, 2,000 years ago, a little bit more, they started writing books. And the books were really just leaves that they put together, they glued together on papyrus sheets. Why am I telling you this? You'll hear. You'll understand in a minute. 1447, the printing press. And this was a big revolution in mass communication because all of a sudden they could get the word out, their message out, their story from one person to many, many, many people through books and the printing press. The poster. Poster was another step in the evolution of mass communications. the radio. Now, what happened? I'm just going to pause here for a second. Each time one of these innovations came out, did it displace any of the media before it? No. So it added to it. So now the radio already has to compete with newspapers, posters, and even the writing on cave walls. They still had that, except we still have the writing on cave walls, don't we? Anybody go under an underpass lately and people spray things with spray paint here? Yeah. Isn't that the same thing? So every time there's an innovation, it doesn't displace what happened before, it adds to it. After the radio came television. And after television came the internet. And even within each of these media, so with television started out with 2 channels, and now the average person is 200 channels or more with satellite or cable, right? It's incredible, the amount of communication that's coming out here. Now, the internet, what does this mean? This means ads and communication are everywhere. Everywhere you turn, there's a message. Someone wants to speak to you, right? Even in, do you have bathroom advertising here? Toilet advertising? Urinal? Standing at the urinal, I'm looking at an ad. I have no choice. Right? There's everything. Everything you could imagine. So what does this do? Oh, what's happening next? Is this the end? Do you think this is the end? Did anybody see the movie Blade Runner? Long time ago. I know, we're showing our age here. Anyway, it came out in 1982. Whoops! Blade Runner. Remember this scene where there was this giant ad, giant video on a whole building? And they predicted this was going to happen in the year 2019. Guess what? Somebody in LA is building this, and it's due to be finished this year. Somebody is building 2 condo buildings, condominiums, and they're putting light-emitting diodes all along the side of the building. We are going to have what the science fiction writers told us in 2020. We're going to have it in 2009, 2010. So now, what does this mean? But you already know the answer because you've seen this. How many messages do we get a day on average? Quick. 5,000. See, some people are paying attention. So what is life like when you have 5,000 marketing messages thrown at you every single day? And by the way, this is just one of the estimates. The research that I did showed me that the estimates actually go as high as 20,000, depending on what you count as a marketing message or not. But even on your mobile phone, right? You have messages. You have advertising on mobile, supposed to be the next big thing. Information overload. What happens is you have audience fragmentation, short attention span, and lost in the clutter. Now, what do I mean by audience fragmentation? Audience fragmentation is when you have the people that you want to speak to fragmented or split according to all their different favorite media. Some people are watching television. Some people are looking at the ads on their mobile phone. Some people pay attention to the outdoor posters. Some people are looking at the bench advertising. Some people are only looking at the ads in front of the urinal. Some people only go to the internet. I don't watch TV. All my information I get through the internet. So if somebody wants to speak to me through mass communications, it's never going to find me through television. Same thing is happening to the people that you need to speak to. Now, I know some of you are in business for yourself. Some of you are working in a company. And some of you may be looking for a job. So we'll talk about how this is relevant to absolutely everybody in this room. Because we all have the challenge of communicating with the people that we need to get our message to. Would you agree with that? But everybody is bombarded with all these messages. And so what happens is, we have the societal equivalent of ADD. You know what ADD is? Attention Deficit Syndrome. Everybody has it. Because there's so much marketing and so many messages being thrown at everybody, we don't have the ability to focus on anything the way we used to be able to. So people have a short attention span. We have to be able to interest people right away. And if we can't, they're on to the next message. We're lost in the clutter. We're not only competing with the other people and businesses that are in the same business as we are. We are competing with everybody who has a message to give, a message to communicate. How do we attract people's attention long enough for them to absorb the message that we want to give them? I read an interesting statistic that said, my notes are on the other side, so I have to do this from memory. The average person has enough information in a day in the New York Times than somebody in the 1800s would have seen in their entire lifetime. Entire lifetime, and they could get the same quantity of information one day in the New York Times. That's what we're dealing with today, and that is the biggest challenge that we have. Here's another interesting statistic. 50% of the companies on the Dow Jones Industrial Average that were formed since 1850 were founded during a recession. 50% of the companies. What does this tell you? What would you take away from this? What would you understand? That it doesn't, that's right. There's opportunity in good times, there's opportunity in bad times, there are challenges in good times, and there are challenges in bad times. So for everybody who is saying things would be better if the economy were better, if we didn't have a global economic crisis, to those people, I say nonsense. You have the same challenges, and I will explain exactly why. The economy goes up, more sellers for the same number of buyers. What do you get? More competition. Did everybody see that? Economy goes up, more sellers, you attract more companies into your space, you get more competition. Not unlike if you're getting a job, too. More people want to get into the business that you're in. The economy goes down. Fewer buyers for the same number of sellers. What do you get? More competition. Now you know why 50% of the companies that are successful started during a recession, and 50% that started that were successful not during a recession, during great times. It makes no difference. But the key challenge that they have, regardless of whether the economy is going up or the economy is going down, is competition. It's competition for their message. How do I differentiate myself from everybody else who is in this market with me so that I stand out, so that people see the value that I bring? So if you're a business, if you work in a company where you have to market your products and services, this is the key challenge that you have. How do I differentiate my business from all of the others that are marketing to the same customers? In fact, you could say, how do I differentiate my message from all of the other messages out there? 5,000 a day, maybe 20. If I'm in a company, I'm working in a company, there's a lot of competition for people who want to be promoted, who go to the next level. How do I differentiate myself as an employee so that my bosses take notice? What do I say about who I am? What do I communicate about my core value to the company? And if I'm looking for a job, there's also competition, isn't there? Same thing. How do I differentiate myself from all of the other people going for the same job? Competition, not the economy, is the biggest problem that we have. How do companies differentiate themselves? How do they gain leadership? How do big brands gain leadership in their marketplace? How do people gain leadership within a company? They do it by exploiting what makes them different. Does that make sense? If you take a look at all the brands, it's what makes them different that's what attracts people to them. Not why they're the same, but it's what makes them different. When we think of people, great people, what we admire in them is what makes them different. Not why they're the same as everybody else. Can you see that? So let's take a look. You heard Shahad say, everything starts with a conversation. And he's right. And it's a big part of the work that I do. Now, how do we have conversations? Let me take this one step further. Very simple expression. Do you have this expression here in Israel? If my mother never had a conversation with my father, I would not be here today. Right? If you don't have conversations with your customers, your sales will not be here tomorrow. If you don't have conversations with people in your community who are in a position to refer you for a job or refer a client to you, you will not reach the goals that you set out for yourself. Does that make sense? So how do we have conversations? Well, we have conversations around what makes us different. By focusing on what makes us different. By being aware of what makes us different. A lot of the work that I do with companies, and if you're here on the, when is it, Sunday? Friday? The half day? Sunday, thank you. If you're here, you'll see the entire focus is on helping you discover what makes you different. Because you can't just ask somebody, okay, now we're going to discover what makes you different. We're going to work on your differentiation. Tell me, what makes you different? You can't do that because our brains go into a tailspin. Our brains automatically say, oh, what makes it? That's like saying, now I'm going to teach you how to make $1 million. Or 3.5 million shekels. First, you get 3.5 million shekels. Right? You know people like that? It's not so easy. You can't use the same language to help you find the answer. You can't use the same language in the question that you're asking. And that's why I've come up with exercises like what drives you crazy makes you great. I don't want to give too much of it away, but if you think about it, now it's not what makes you great about your parents, that's different. That you have the same. But what makes you crazy is what makes you great. We'll talk about that. Well, we'll talk about that a lot more on Sunday. But here's the theory. This is something that I came up with by looking at the major brands. A very simple formula. People think it's very complicated to help you figure out what makes you different in your market or from all the other people around you. It's not that complicated. It is hard, but it is not complicated. In fact, it's incredibly simple. And so I'm going to show you a simple mechanism, a simple formula for helping people and companies discover what makes them different. And then I will show you how the major brands, or some of the major brands, have used it to establish leadership in their marketplaces. Let's imagine you have 3 circles. In one circle, you've got everything about you. That's your brand. Everything you offer to your customers, everything you say that you do, everything that you actually do. It's like if you had a store, it's absolutely everything. It's where you have your location, it's how people greet the customers at the door, it's how you answer the telephone, it's everything. Everything you do is in that circle. All the services you provide, all the products you create, everything. Pretty simple. You're with me so far? Okay? I like audience participation, so at the very least, nod your heads. Because I know Israelis are not shy. Yes? They're not shy.
They're different.
They're different, absolutely. And great. And great, because you could do this with nationalities too. And I know somebody who's doing exactly that. In the other circle, you have what your customers want. Or if you're looking for a job, it's what your employer might want. Or if you're already in a position, it's what your management might want from you. Would you agree with this? This makes sense. If you have something that your customers want, at least you have a business. Yes? But if that's all you have a business that you might be only able to compete on price, which is not a good place to be. It's a generic business. Because anybody else could come in and offer the same thing. Would you agree? Who said no? Okay. Why?
Because you are always different. Even if you fight on price, there is service.
Okay. See, I told you Israelis aren't shy. You're exactly right. And thank you for saying that, because that's the next one. Nice segue. Now segue, not this one. Segue is like a bridge. I had to explain that today. Okay. The bottom circle is what your competitors are not offering or promoting. In other words, they may have something that you have, but they don't appreciate its value, and so they're not even talking about it. They're not making a big deal of it. They're not promoting it. Do you see what I'm saying here? So, where do you think the best place to focus your message is? Not only great, not only not shy, but smart too. Yeah. Your strongest market message is right in the middle at the intersection. Oh, I forgot. For everybody else I have to explain what a Venn diagram is. But you're engineers. In the middle, at the intersection of everything I offer, intersecting with what my customers want, intersecting with what my competitors are not talking about. Right in the center is your strongest message. Tell you something, the biggest mistake that companies make, the biggest mistake that people make when they go to a networking event, and I'll tell you exactly how, is they try to communicate everything that's in the brand circle. Everything that's in there. But you don't need to communicate everything. In fact, it's counterproductive to communicate everything. Because there's really only 1, 2, maybe maximum 3 things that really fit the middle. And those are the only things you have to communicate. Those are your strongest messages.
And what happens if the middle is void?
Then you speak to this gentleman who says there is always something different about you. And there is.
Well, it has to be different about me, the customer has to want it,
Yeah?
and I have to have it.
Yes.
Well, it may not happen.
So, great, not shy, smart, not always optimistic. The truth, I have never, and this is what I do. This is what I do every single day. I have never had a client where I couldn't find something in the middle. Never. There is always something special. But here's the deal. You have to be willing to change some of the other things. Maybe you have to change your customers. I'm serious. Because what happens if you're trying to promote something that you have, that your customers want, or that's not different? Then you have a generic product. What happens if you're trying to promote something that your competitors are not talking about, but your customers want, but it's not a strength for you? Is that a good idea? There are a lot of companies that try that. And what happens? All they end up doing is developing the market for somebody else. Somebody for whom that is a strength. They come in, they take all the customers away because it's not your strength. I talk a lot, and if you go to my website, you'll hear me talk a lot. Yeah, you'll actually hear me talk a lot on my website about what I call your authentic competitive advantage. Your authentic competitive advantage is what is true for you, what is a true strength, a true differentiation for you, where it overlaps with what your customers want and where it overlaps with what your competitors are not talking about. You know, we live in such a wonderful world. 20 years, even 20, and this is why the old rules of marketing and selling don't work anymore. Because the old rules of marketing were, I only have this number of people in the room. How do I maximize my conversion ratio? You've heard that? But now with the internet and with travel being so easy and with communication being so cheap all over the world, I can talk to anybody. I can talk to anybody. So instead of saying, how can I manipulate people into buying what I have, which is the old style of marketing and selling, or how do I convert the maximum number of people in the room, ask yourself a different question. Ask yourself, how can I be so clear and so compelling about what I have to offer that those people who want it, those people who will get value from it, will hear about it and find me? Would that be a better place to be? That is what I'm suggesting that you do. Yeah.
There's a contradiction in what you said.
No, I hate it when that happens.
You said that the price you have to pay is to be able to change things, your customers, your strengths, etc. And you answered this gentleman that if you identify a customer's need and none of the existing competitors are doing so, but it's not currently a strength of yours, if you do develop it, you will develop it eventually for someone else.
What I'm saying is, if many companies are very willing to play with that variable, the bottom one. And I'm suggesting that's the one, if you dig deep enough and find your authentic strength, your real strength, what really sets you apart at a deep level, that's the one thing you shouldn't play with. And I've seen that time and again. We have a question from the audience. Okay. I didn't know there were people in another room. Okay, there are people in the other room. So the question was, there's a contradiction, he claims. No, there's a little problem. Because what I said at the beginning, I answered a question two ways. I said, you have to be prepared to play with the variables and change things, and you're absolutely right. And then I said, but what if you don't find anything in the middle? And I say, I'm not phrasing this right. You want to say it again? How did you say it? So what is the contradiction that you see?
If you identify customer need and you see that none of the competition is doing so, but it's currently not a strength of yours, you advise against developing it.
Right. That's right. Because so let me repeat the question. So I advise again, even if it fits the model. That's right. That's what I say. It may fit the model, but it's not a real strength. Okay? What I'm saying is, then technically, it doesn't belong there if it's not a real strength. And I'm also saying that it's better to play with the customer, the variable of the customer, than it is to play with your core strength. It has to be a core strength. Does that make sense? Is that better? Is that it? Did I explain myself all right this time? Okay. People in the next room? Let me show you how this works. Because I'll tell you, you ever go to a networking event and somebody said, you ask them what they do? I did this. I went to a networking event a couple of months ago, and somebody says, I said, what do you do? He says, well, I do some web design. I also put on events. And I help people, their companies do search engine optimization. And, and you know what? I put on great parties, and and I'm a chef. What are you thinking? Great man. Would make a good husband. And he's very important. Yes, thank you. But you wouldn't think he's good at any one of those things, would you? He might be good at one of them, two of them, but he's not somebody that you would recommend to somebody. Then compare that to somebody else. And you say, okay, what do you do? He says, well, I do search engine optimization. In fact, that's all I do. I've been doing it for 15 years, even before it started being in fashion. Maybe boring, but if that's what you need, would you recommend this person? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let's see how the major brands use this formula. You remember this? You don't remember this. Remember that company that was on one of the 14 companies that started during a recession? Federal Express. They started late 70s, early 80s, and during a recession, the conventional wisdom was that not only is it harder to establish yourself, but you don't want to use humor because people aren't in a fun mood. Let me show you the commercial that Federal Express did.
Oh.
Whoops.
Okay, you just travel plans to make it to New York, and Monday LA, Tuesday New York, and Wednesday LA, Thursday New York, and Friday. Got it. So you want to work here? What really makes you think you deserve a job?
Well, sir, I think I'm good figures and have a sharp mind.
Excellent. Can you start on Monday?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Without hesitation.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Wonderful. And in conclusion, Jim Bill, Bob, Paul, Frank, Low, Dog, and Ted. Business is business. And as we all know, in order to get something done, you got to do something. In order to do something, you got to get virtual. Let's get work. I hate to be PD did a bang of job. I'm putting on charge of Pittsburgh. I know it's perfect, Peter. That's why I picked Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's perfect. Peter, may I call you Pete? Probably Pete.
Is Mr. Hitler here to see you?
I'll wait 15 seconds.
Can you wait 15 seconds?
I'll wait 15 seconds.
Congratulations on your deal in Denver, Dave. I'm putting you down to deal with Dallas. So under the deal, do we have a deal? It's a deal. I got to go get a call coming in. Hi, Buck. Just tell the company.
In this fast-moving, high-pressure, get-it-done-yesterday world, aren't you glad there's one company that can keep up with it all?
Got a deal good. I'm putting you down to deal with Dick. Dick, what's the deal with the deal? We're dealing. David's the deal with Don, Doc, Dick. Doc, it's the deal with Dave, Dick, and Dave. Come on, it's a Doc with Dick, David, Dick. Gotta go, Dave. Disconnecting. Gotta go, Dick. Disconnecting. Gotta go, Dick. Disconnecting.
Federal Express. But it absolutely positively has to be there overnight.
So that's Federal Express. If you had to sum it up in one word, if you had to put what they would put in the middle of that diagram, what do you think it might be? Important. What else? That's not it. Huh? Fast. Absolutely. Fast. That's what they're about. Now, are they reliable? Yes. Are they a whole host of other things that they could claim? Other benefits? Other advantages? Yes. But what is the one thing that they focus on? Fast. Apple. Do you remember when the Apple Macintosh was launched? 1984.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like
1984. Is that a phenomenal commercial? That brilliant? I love it. I was not allowed to show that in Iran. In fact, they said, you know what? You have all the wrong stereotypes about Iranians. We're very tolerant people. You can talk about anything you want, except don't talk about sex, religion, or politics. I stood there for 20 minutes. I had to cut out most of my speech. Now, I struggled with this one. What is the one thing in the middle? Or, what is the one message? I mean, there's change. These are my words. Brave new world. But everything will be different. That's the one thing and they very cleverly found ways to actually combine change with personal empowerment. I think that's a brilliant commercial. Now, they're still doing that. They use different words. You must have seen these commercials in Hebrew, right?
Oh, hold up. Here I come. Whoa, PC. Yeah. It's all this trial software. They pack my hard drive full of all these programs that don't do very much unless you buy the whole thing. Or it's just plain useless. Oh, it really slows you down.
You know how it is. Actually, I don't mess just come the stuff you want, like iTunes, iMovie, iPhoto, iLive,
Yeah, let's just do this, okay? Oh, I forgot something.
Well, they may have been good at advertising, but they did miss the market very badly. I don't think it's a good example of what you're trying to do.
I think Apple is
Yeah, brilliant. It's about the business. So IBM
Not shy, squared. This commercial was very successful.
Ah, yeah.
Okay? And it was successful because it was very clear and it didn't try to say too much. Really the main message is that Macs are cool, it's a smart choice, and PCs aren't. That's the message. And they had, I don't know here, but in Canada and the US, we had like 15 different versions, each one focusing on a different thing. But the overall impression was always the same. Macs are cool, smart choice, PCs aren't. Honda, it's a company that I worked with. Tell you a story about Honda. They had a different kind of a challenge. When they came into the North American market, their biggest motorcycle was a 49cc engine. And they came into a market that was dominated by big motorcycles, big, powerful motorcycles, right? Like Harley Davidson. And what happened was the dealers wouldn't take them seriously. The dealers wouldn't even carry Honda motorcycles. So what Honda did said, we have to rethink our strategy. What are we going to do? So they did two things. First of all, they started selling their motorcycles, their 49cc motorcycles, through department stores, not through motorcycle dealerships. That was interesting. The second thing they did is they said, well, we can't compete on the message of power, freedom, all of that stuff, right? So we have to find another way to compete. I'll show you this commercial, and I want you to think of two things while you're looking at this commercial. The first thing is, I'd like you to think of what is the message that they're communicating, and the second thing is, can you guess who the actor is?
You rain or sleet or snow, you gotta get up and go. When the door is up and you're hitting the ground, there's something that you ought to know. Something happened on earth, and you can't go wherever you go. Something happened on earth, let them happen to you, let them happen to you, let them happen to you. The man who comes your way, don't you let it ruin your day. Just sing a song as you go along. It's all gonna be okay. Good things happen on earth, so let them happen to you.
All right, so who is the actor? John Travolta. What gave it away? His face or his walk? His face? His what? Both. You needed both, right? So I already had it up there. But the key message is just good things happen on a Honda. Good things. They also had another tagline for a while, which was, you meet the nicest people on a Honda. That was their tagline or their theme line for a long time. And you can understand why that was a good differentiator for them. And it was true. Right? That worked because it differentiated them against the big, powerful motorcycles that were already there. Anybody see this commercial?
Isn't it nice when things just work?
Nice, isn't it? You know, this commercial was never shown on television, and yet it still had 20 million views on the internet. Amazing, isn't it? What would you say is the key message here? This is what I take from it. It just works. And this is one of the things that the announcer said at the end. It just works. Who said that? Is it too long? You know, famous advertising person, Gossamer, I think his name was, in the 60s. He said, people don't read advertising. They read what interests them. This interested enough people to watch it to the end.
The question is whether people bought more Honda because of that or just enjoyed it.
That's a good question. We're talking about the power of communication here. So the thing is, it supports the brand position. Could I say, I don't know, could I say that this one commercial was responsible for increased sales? I don't know. But can I say that this reinforced their brand position because it's consistent with absolutely everything else that Honda says? It's consistent with the way they build their cars. It's consistent with the culture in the company. It's consistent with what people think of cars. Honda cars just work. They're made well. Things don't break as much as with the American cars. Well, I've had 3 Hondas. I could tell you I think it's true. Anybody seen this one? Some people. more condoms. Or cars. But the message is very clear, isn't it? Now, they didn't say, buy the condoms because of a whole bunch of reasons, right? They just focus on one message. Pardon me? One reason. And actually, because I know the people are really smart, I will tell you this doesn't fit exactly the model. Because there are other companies who could say, don't use condoms because. Well, actually, I take that back. This does fit the model because all the other companies are saying, don't use condoms because they feel better, because they have these ridges on them, because they're black, right? Whatever. But these guys are just the basic message. And nobody else was saying it. So, it does fit the model. And it's funny. All of the other ones are trying to be sexy, right? And they're funny. So why is it so difficult for us to communicate clearly? It's difficult for us to communicate clearly because... it's going too fast. Sorry. Yeah, we don't have time to see it again. We'll see it later. We always get... people teach us how to do sales and marketing. They say, focus on the emotional. They say, always lead with the highest level benefit. They say, sometimes be serious or be funny or be lighthearted. They say, don't use negative headlines. Heard that? Don't use negative headlines? I say, throw away the rule book. The only thing that matters is what's of interest to other people. The only thing that matters is the match between your true strength that you have to offer and what other people need. I'll tell you a quick story about that, don't use negative statements. I hear that so often. I was giving a presentation. It's not me. I was giving a presentation, a creative presentation. This is back when I was working in advertising. I had an advertising agency. We were giving a presentation in Winnipeg. I think Shahar has relatives in Winnipeg. And I'll leave that one. It's the people in the other room. So, we worked really hard on this creative presentation, and we're presenting it, and we really were very excited about it. We thought it was exactly what the client needed. We showed the client, went through a whole presentation, and at the end the client said, well, we can't use that. I said, well, why not? He said, because it's got a negative question. I said, so? And he said, well, everybody knows you can't have a negative negative statement in a headline. Everybody knows. And I said, who's everybody? Who's walking around with these rules that you think you heard somewhere? You have to be this, you have to be that, you have to speak a certain way. Don't use negative headlines. Always use an open-ended question when you're in sales. You heard this one? Right? Let's just talk about the negative statements. Right? Who could think of a negative tagline? One of the most, and I know you've seen it here, one of the most famous negative taglines ever. Who knows the one for American Express? Don't leave home without it. Do you know the one for Sara Lee? Sara Lee, they make cakes. I don't know if you would have seen it, huh? Nobody doesn't like Sara Lee. Now, I know there are engineers in the room. You're probably saying, 2 negatives, it's okay. But I know communication experts who say, not only does it have a negative, but it's complicated and they won't understand it. It makes them think too much. Yeah, well, you say it's a good thing. What I'm saying is that we're all walking around with these rules that we have in our heads. We think we have to be a certain way. The only thing that matters is the genuine difference that you have. Does it match with what people want? That's the only thing that matters. Now, I'll go back to this. If you had handouts, I would ask you to draw it out for yourself. Do this. If you want to do it for your company, you do it for your company. If you do it for yourself, because you can. You are selling a service. just like a company or a brand is. You represent values. You have a difference. You have value that you offer to your employers and to your company's clients. Same thing, always. That's why I say everything starts with what makes you different. We're not trying to communicate everything about you. We know that you do many things extremely well, but we're only looking for the 1, 2, or 3 things that will help you establish leadership. Does that make sense? What differentiates our business in the market? There's a question you ask yourself. What differentiates our business in the market? And I showed you a model for that. What differentiates the individuals on our teams? If you're a manager and you have people in your team, ask yourself, what makes them special? Each one. Because leadership begins, obviously, with the people. Yes? One more question. What differentiates me as a leader? Ask yourself this. What do I do that is so special, so great, and different from what other people? You see, we're taught from an early age to blend in and not be different. And I'm asking you to do the opposite. Focus on what makes you different. Now, why is it so difficult for us to find it? It's difficult for us to find it because I will bet that what makes you different and what makes you special, you can't see it because it comes naturally to you. Your greatest strength that you have to offer, you can't see it because it doesn't require any effort, because it comes so naturally to you. And what are we taught around effort? Effort equals value, yes? What if you do something so naturally, so effortlessly, you don't even realize you're doing it? And yet that's the most valuable thing you have to offer. I'll tell you a quick story about how I started to work with this. I already told you that I used to run an advertising agency. And I ran my agency for a number of years. I started an internet business. In fact, I'm quite proud of the fact that I launched the world's first online searchable directory of creative professionals back in 1995, back when there was no such thing as a search engine. In fact, I started the internet, working on the internet. Explorer didn't exist. Netscape was at 0.9. And there wasn't a search engine, there was Yahoo. That was the only one. Google didn't exist. All right, so I launched that, and then I sold it, and then I left I dropped my advertising agency because I realized I didn't really enjoy what I was doing. And I said, well, what do I do now? I don't have an online business anymore. I don't have my agency anymore. What do I do now? And I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know. I knew I was a good copywriter, but I didn't want to do that anymore. I knew there was something that I was doing that was special, but I didn't know what it was. And if I could figure out what it was, I would have something far more valuable than just the ability to write another brochure or another outdoor poster. So I sat down with a friend of mine. He took me through a process. We invented a process to help me discover it. And I remember that the feedback that I got from all my clients was, Michel, you know what? For the first time in our history, we actually have a true understanding of who we are, what we do, and the true value that we offer to our customers and clients. And what do you think my reaction was when I heard that? Okay, well, you know, you hire a professional copywriter, that's what you get. Because that's what we do, right? But clearly they weren't getting that from other copywriters. Clearly there was something that I was doing that was different. But I wasn't acknowledging it. So here's a tip. Anytime or next time somebody says to you, wow, that was really cool. And you go, yeah, it was nothing. It's something. It could be the most valuable thing you have to offer. So pay attention. Pay attention. In fact, Here's what I learned after this entire process that I went through with my friend. And by the way, that's when I founded my company, The Essential Message. At one point, he said to me, Michel, it's like what you do for companies is you help them discover their essential message. I said, that makes sense. And from that point on, that was the only thing I did. I've been doing it for 25 years, but I've been mixing it up with all kinds of other things. I wasn't clear about what I was really doing better than anybody else. So I had 3 lessons from that. The first lesson I learned is the thing that you do that you are best at is invisible to yourself. The thing that I was doing that was of greatest value, that I was best at, was invisible to me. That's what I thought. It's nothing. I just do it. I don't even realize I was doing it. So I would like to ask you a question. Is it possible that you do something so well, so brilliantly, and so naturally that you don't even realize you're doing it? Is it possible? I'll tell you something else. The second lesson that I learned was that if it's invisible to me, then I can't place any value on it. Does that make sense? Obviously. If it's invisible to me, if I don't even acknowledge that I do it, how can I possibly place value on it? So here's what I learned. Here's what I realized. When I was working in my ad agency and I was going to my clients' offices, but here's what happened. They would give me a brief. You know how it works with advertising agencies. They give you a brief. You go you look at the brief. You go back to your office. You give it to the creative team. You develop advertising. Then you come back with advertising. Well, I would look at the brief and I'd say, this is really crappy. There's nothing in here that differentiates them. There's nothing in here that I could really sink my teeth into and do great work for them. So I would go back to the client, and I'd spend a half day with them, or a day, and I'd say, we've got to do better than this. And after the end of the day, I'd say, yes, that's what we need to advertise. I'd go back to my office, and I'd do work, and I'd do all the production, usually lose money on that part. And then they gave me the feedback. For the first time in our history, we actually know who we are as a company, who we are as an organization, and what we do and the true value that we offer to our clients. Do you think that I charged for that service when I went to the company and I spent the day with them? It was just something that I had to do. It was just something that I was driven to do in order for me to do the work. Is there something that you are giving away that is actually the most valuable thing you have to offer? Think about that. Is there something that you are giving away, like I was giving away, but it's actually the most valuable thing you have to offer? The third lesson that I learned is that when I really understood what my value was, what my differentiation is, what I really offered to my clients, way beyond anything else they got from other communications experts. When I finally understood what that was, and I could look anybody in the face and I say, I am brilliant at helping my clients discover their true differentiation and communicating it in the absolute most compelling way. I am brilliant at it. In fact, I may just be the best in the world. And I say that with absolute confidence. When I finally understood that, it made the difference in everything. Not just in my business, but in my life. Because I finally figured out what it was that I'm genuinely good at. Authentic competitive advantage. That's what I'm talking about. So here's the question for you. If you knew what you were genuinely good at, genuinely better at than anybody else, what difference would it make to you? What difference would it make in your business if you run a business? What difference would it make to the jobs that you go after? What difference would it make in terms of the salaries that you ask for? What difference would it make when you go home and how you feel about yourself? What difference would it make when you wake up in the morning and you say, oh, I'm going to spend another day doing or I'm going to spend another day doing what I do best, doing what I know people value, what I know they appreciate. What difference would that make to you? Socrates said it. Actually, they're not sure if Socrates said it or one of 5 other Greek philosophers said it. It's true. They don't know. Most people say Socrates. Know thyself. And it's as true for, 5,000 years ago? Anybody help me? 6? Approximately? 8? It's as true a long time ago as it is today. And it's as true for individuals as it is for businesses. There's a Persian, every culture in the world has, although I couldn't find one in the Torah, I'm sorry. That's true, I even asked the rabbi. I couldn't find it. Anyway, knowledge of self is knowledge of God. Hindu proverb, look within, you are the Buddha. Do you see how they're all saying the same thing? That all your goals in life, all your ideals, they start here. Shakespeare, in Hamlet, to thine own self be true. Now, I'm just going to leave you with this one story because I've been doing this for a long time. And of course, I have to be the model, right, for my clients. Not an easy thing sometimes. And once you go down this path of differentiation, once you go down this path of self-exploration, yes, you're doing it for your career or your business or your bosses, but you're doing it for yourself. Once you go down this path, you might end up at your parents' house. You might discover why you are who you are by looking at who your parents were, who your ancestors were, and what gifts you got from them. So let me tell you how that works in my case. My mother, I'll tell you about my father first. My father is he was born in Iran, and he went to boarding school in France. And so he really considered himself more French. And when the war broke out, Second World War, he tried to join the French. He tried to join the French army, but they wouldn't let him in because he wasn't French. So he had to join the French Foreign Legion, of all places. Fought very hard in the war. Met my mother, came to Canada, worked really hard, had an incredible work ethic. My father, and he was a man of words. He studied linguistics in France. When he came to Canada, he started doing translation. He founded the translation department at McGill University. And he was the head of the translation department. He's a man of words. And when I realized that, hey, I'm an advertising copywriter. Okay, I get that from my dad. I understand that. Right? Then I looked at my mother. Now, my mother, survivor of the Holocaust. And she was in Auschwitz for a year. She actually did the famous 3-day death march that you might know about. And she told me that at one point she lay down. Now you know that the German soldiers were on orders to shoot anybody who lay down. She lay down. As luck should have it, an old German soldier came up to her and said, "Please get up. I don't want to shoot you." You don't hear stories like that. She got up and she continued marching. They put her in another cattle car where they took her to another concentration camp. When the Allies finally liberated the other concentration camp, she was lying on the dirt in the road, motionless. They thought she was dead. Just skin and bones. She finally found enough breath when somebody said, "Are there any French nationals here?" She managed to pick her head up and say, "Moi, monsieur, je suis français." And they carried her back. And they fed her very slowly back to health. Now you know, an experience like that could send people one of two ways. Either they live with the burden of the horrors of the camp, and they live in despair for the rest of their lives. And we all know people like that. It doesn't matter what tragedy they had, but we all know people who were deeply affected by that, by their tragedy, and they live with it for the rest of their lives. We know other people who get through something like that, and they cherish every breath they take. My mother cherishes every breath she takes. In fact, she's still around, thank God. Vibrant, huge energy, walks with my wife, walks the dogs. My greatest memory is 2 years ago. She's in my backyard, and she's dancing. There's no music. No music. She doesn't need music to dance. So I look at that, and I say, my father, man of words. My mother, lover of life. Now I know why they called me a motivational speaker. I never knew. Know thyself. Discover what makes you great. It will be the greatest gift you give not just to yourself, but to your family, your friends, all the people around you, your customers and clients, your bosses, your managers, your company. Discover who you are, what makes you different as a person. It is what makes you better, period. And I want to thank everybody for listening.
I'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
Now you officially have a document that says you not only lectured, but you also benefited the participants.
Thank you very much.
for your time.
Thank you. Another one.
Thank you very much. תודה רבה. ערב טוב. ביי ביי.